Let's go. Good evening, everybody. This is Rolo, the Puerto Rican Pistolero, coming to you live from another schizophrenic weather day here in beautiful Puerto Rico, the territory that just keeps on giving over here. I hope you are all doing this excellent this hump day. I forgot that it was Wednesday because I ended up playing Ready or Not with the Old Man and Commander N yesterday night. Some of the new levels that came out, and it made me feel like I was doing a stream even though we weren't live. I kind of wish we had, but Kamo was so funny because Ready or Not is such a deliberate and difficult game compared to what we're used to playing, that he was like, this is so slow, I can't run, I don't. And it's very complex playing on a controller because of all the different commands and things that you've got, even though when we play multiplayer, you don't control any of the bots or anything like that. So that was an enjoyable experience. I've gotten much better at the game. I don't think that if we brought the F team back, that it would be the F team anymore. It would probably be like the B team, and Commander and I were getting A's as a duo. So I don't know what that means. I don't think the game has gotten easier. I'd like to think that we've just gotten a lot better. But we'll see with Kamo. We may allow him to take point, and then we'll see how disastrous that may end up for us. Maybe he'll do really well. I'm not sure. We did get a bravo with him. So without further ado, let's talk about what's going on. There's a lot of things that have been going down in the last week or so. As you know, I think everybody has a little bit of political fatigue, but things have been a little bit spicier and more exciting than usual. There's a lot of drama going on YouTube space. Like, I'm not really going to talk about that stuff because that's not my thing. I don't talk about like the gossip and drama, but geez Louise, has there been a lot of drama going on in this space with like the quartering and all that stuff. I didn't even know what was going on there because I really don't care what people do. I watch and then I find out that like people are having all these beefs and everything like that. I'm like, whoa, what the hell is going on? So that's always very it's always very interesting because I'm oblivious to everything that goes on, especially since I've moved out of that space. When I was in it, I knew about the drama, but I never talked about it. And now that I'm out of it, I know even less about it, and I don't care at all. But I'm never really surprised about the things that I hear, just because it's wild out there. But I will talk about some of the political drama that's been going on. Namely, I've mentioned Tucker Carlson for a while. I'll go into it a little bit deeper because I think the dude is finally. He was already moving in a direction that was off the rails, but man, the dude has just totally jumped off the deep end right now, and I think it's beyond just political beef and grifting for money, or as if Tucker Carlson needed any money, but it's really gotten crazy. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the blockade. We'll talk about the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz as negotiations have broken down. I think it's funny now that everybody, not that people didn't know this, but I don't understand how this wasn't the prevailing theory, because who am I who really am I when it comes to geopolitics? That's not my forte. I took an international relations class in college, and my professor told me you should become an international relations major. The guy was great. He was actually an African professor from Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast. Fantastic guy. Loved the United States a lot. Whoa, you've got Den Hawken dropped the 5 starting right away. And hello to the chat. I didn't have the chat open, so now I do. Shout out to Den Hawken and the mod squad. Novella Princess, of course. Cerberus in there trying to share. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with share the stream with everybody that you deem it all helps every little bit. We see Tom is back in the chat. Good to see you, Tom. Hope you're doing well. TFM, never forgotten by me. Always forgotten by the memberships, the membership gifties. I don't know why, but that's just seems to be his fate. Oh, there you go. Well, thank you so much, Cerberus. I appreciate you. I didn't even share the stream on X because, like I said, I forgot it was Wednesday, and my timing was totally off. I thought it was like Friday or something, which is terrible when you're a working man, because you should never think that it's Friday prematurely. It just makes you depressed the next day or you shouldn't be depressed. It makes you discouraged because you know you've got 2 more days of hard work ahead. And lately he's been pretty busy at work. It has its ebbs and flows. The last few weeks have been slow, which is a surprise. That means that Microsoft is not breaking things as usual, or AI coding is not as sloppy as it was. I don't really know what the deal is with that, but in the world of cyberspace, things have been a little bit quiet, which means that that's just the calm before the storm. And who else do we have on here? We got Randy in the chat as well. And I'm sure you lurkers are out there. I love you lurkers. You just got to speak up. So that's what I want to hear. X is, that's kind of a topic with all the stuff that's going on that, we've discussed it a little bit over the last few weeks. Let me rewind a little bit here talking about all the China stuff. I think it's funny that the other day, and I had to retweet it, and I don't usually toot my own horn, but I thought it was funny that, and I'll bring up the tweet here just so that I don't put this out of context. I've watched him pool a lot over the years. I think, like everybody else, Tim is not everyone's cup of tea. Obviously, he is famously known as Milquetoast Fence Sitter, and he can be a little bit, he can be a little bit cocky sometimes, but I respect the work. But I thought this tweet was interesting because if you've been watching this show since I came back a few weeks ago, since the Iran war started, I did the Globe. And if not, go back to the, I believe that was episode 37 or 38 that I first did it. And I recapped it again a couple of weeks ago, where I've said that the angle all along for this is really trying to crush China specifically. And now, as more time goes on, the globalists, and trying to re-exert America as the true super power within the world, the global empire, whatever you want to call it. I think less of an empire because we're not necessarily conquering other states the way that an empire would. And we certainly don't have an emperor. I think some people these days may want us to go down that path, but we don't want to totally copy what happened with Rome because it didn't work out in the end. It lasted a long time, but it wasn't good for a long time either. But I'm not particularly, I'm not necessarily an expert, and maybe the experts are not people that we want to follow that much anymore, because it seems like a lot of them are just consumed by academic prowess and trying to score points within the university circles with a bunch of BS and to get a lot of money from think tanks. So maybe common sense is a more specialized trait these days. But to me, it seemed fairly obvious what the play here was with going for Iran. But it is nice that somebody else kind of laid it down this way and included some of the things that I've said, basically of why Trump lied. And I'll use the word lie. I know sometimes Kamo doesn't like it when I use that, but it's the truth. The truth is that it may have been strategic, but obviously Trump made certain campaign promises, and like any politician, we know that that's worth that's never worth that much. But when you have to look at the strategic play of geopolitics, and when you start gathering more information, you can't necessarily. You're probably going to backtrack on certain things, or you're going to realize, well, I can't actually follow through with this because either A, I don't have the power to do it, or B, I did not have the information that I needed to be able to follow through with this. And It's like making a promise to your kids. Sometimes I think that's the best example, that you're going to buy them something and then it's totally sold out. Did you lie to them, or did it just not work out the way that you wish it could have? Be that as it may, and take that how you will. Let's go to the tweet here, which is from a couple of days ago. I think it's possible the shuttering of the Strait of Hormuz was the intended condition. I didn't come up with this idea. Well, there you go. I'm seeing that's soft credit for me. I'm kidding. But with U.S. crude pushing record levels and China livid after getting cut off from a major supplier, there are some things to consider. Trump can't come out and say we went to war over oil. Like I said, he can't just explain what his economic play is right now. So we get a handful of excuses like nuclear weapons or human rights abuses. The war is driving up gas prices in the U.S. and people are pissed off. The Trump admin can't just come out and say we're intentionally making it hard for you so it will be harder for China. The idea is that Trump is taking a hit to the U.S. economy in an effort to bring an even greater hit to China and other debt holders or adversaries. Considering that the U.S. Responded recently with a blockade of the Strait, I think this is a reasonable conclusion. And it's interesting because if you look at the prices of crude oil, they have been dropping over the last few days, which it's interesting because you would almost think if not that many ships are getting out, and we know that the oil, especially that's going towards Asia, is now being blocked, why would the price of crude oil drop? And it's because there's some stability in knowing that the U.S. Navy is exerting its power here. And people would, as much as they complain about the United States, that's you're going to have. They would much rather have the U.S. military exerting force rather than chaos caused by Iran and its terrorist proxies. And so there's obviously going to be a lag in this. We won't see this because there's a difference between oil futures and what the actual spot price of oil is. Much to my dismay, I did a deep dive about this a few weeks ago, and maybe I'll go into this. I can't really articulate it now because I don't have it all in front of me, but I pretty much did some research using Grok and looking through various articles of trying to figure out whether the U.S. could become energy independent and how that would look and how it would affect everything. And the long and short of it is, because, and this is all intentional after World War II, and this is what globalism is really all about. The purpose of globalism, at least as it was originally intended, and as we know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, is that the powers that be at the time figured, how can we prevent a war as catastrophic as the two wars that we went through in Europe in World War I and World War II? And the logic was, if we intrinsically tie ourselves to a global economy and become interdependent with trade, then to have any of the world's great powers go to war with one another would be so devastating economically, it's not worth it. And no single power would be able to exert their will upon the others without facing some very painful consequences, especially as our standards of living go up. Then, the threshold for pain is going to decrease for people, as we can see that every day. And I made that argument on a previous episode that the American people, for better or for worse, if we have a solution, I don't know if we have the will to follow through with the solution economically. And yes, a lot of us are hurting. It's not great right there. And the economic outlook, especially with the potential for AI, decades of offshoring, and just the greed that we see within politicians and corporations, it's not something that people really want to hear or deal with. But I think that there's no way of reversing all of this without pain, because it was intentional that this system was created to exert a massive amount of pain on anybody that either wanted to disrupt globalism or smash it all together. And so for as much as we all talk about, we want to be America first, we want to be America first, we want to re-onshore jobs, we want energy independence, we want to get rid of illegals, and we want to stem the tide of China's influence throughout the world, and push back the scourge of Islam, we've allowed so much of an infiltration on every level that there's no way of doing that without facing a lot of pain. So if you're any sort of president that or world leader that would want to reverse that and to start sowing the seeds of independence once again, there's going to be a heavy price to pay. Not only politically, because people don't understand and you can't necessarily tell them what you're doing, because in theory a lot of people would agree with it. I think that is how the MAGA coalition, and that's really what it was. It was a coalition more than a unified movement, is something that would have agreed upon, because Trump attracted a lot of different individuals, disaffected liberals, evangelicals, obviously the GOP voters that were already on the Republican bandwagon, the younger men who felt disaffected by, a modern feminism and the racism against white people that we've seen, and the transgender madness, and the rainbow jihad, along with the Islamic jihad. We all saw these things. We were affected by different things, and that's why Trump had a broad coalition, and of course the MAHA, the Make America Healthy Again RFK wing, that wants to eliminate poisons in our foods, and have more scrutiny on vaccines and medications and things like that. So you had a lot of people that wouldn't necessarily agree on certain things, and they also don't have this zeal that the left has. So despite the fact that the left has a coalition of its own, and it's a coalition that's extremely contradictory in and of itself, they're driven by some sort of madness, and it's probably just spiritual warfare making its presence known. And that's really why what holds the left together. It's this madness and a unified hatred for everything that America truly stands for and has for 250 years now almost, that they hate. Whereas the right is a counter. It's almost I hate to use the term sometimes, but it works. It's a reaction to the left. We're in defense against what the left is pushing, not necessarily in defense for all of the same things, because you can separate a lot of these silos. And even though we've educated, each other on some of the things that we care about within the MAGA coalition, for the most part, a lot of these groups would have been traditionally thrown as moderates, independents, or even Democrats, and we would have voted separately had the political winds been different, and if the left had not presented itself as this unified adversary that we could have. So I think that that was always going to make it a difficult coalition to keep together, especially for a political party like the GOP, which the GOP historically hates its own voter base and especially hates Donald Trump. It's just he's been the catalyst for it. But it's pretty obvious that the faster that Trump could get out of here, and the more quickly they can install somebody like a Rubio, which Rubio has been an excellent Secretary of State in my opinion. But I think Rubio is like Rubio in a lot of ways. And like I said, I've seen Rubio from the days where he was in the city council for Miami. I believe the city of Miami, if I'm not mistaken. I'm wary of anybody that has always had aspirations to be president. And it's clear that Marco Rubio always wanted to be president, and he wanted to skip the steps that make somebody a better president if you're going from a purely political standpoint, which is, I think that there's kind of three paths, and now Trump has given the fourth path that you can kind of run for president traditionally. And that is being a congressman or senator, being in the military, or being a governor. And now those three are more the governmental paths, obviously. And then Trump has shown that you can be a captain of industry and somebody with money, or I guess even a pseudo celebrity, because Trump is a businessman and a celebrity on top of now being a politician himself. That Those are kind of the three silos that you would traditionally come from. And I would say that the stronger ones are being a governor because it shows that you already have executive experience in running a state and handling issues with the legislature that you have to deal with constantly during those terms, and being in the military, which again, you're a leader of men, you may have combat experience, so people uh, you have a track record of being able to perform under pressure if you came from the officer corps, and especially if you have combat experience, because there's a lot of officers from the pre-war on terror period and after that are bureaucrats and politicians in their own right. So I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about actual combat proven leaders. And then you've got somebody that comes from Congress, which is the weakest pillar of politics, because in Congress, what do you really do? You can go down the path of Obama where you didn't do anything and you just voted present. And as long as you can articulate yourself well, you're fairly, people think that you're decent looking and you got a good voice, then essentially you can coast your way through if the party wants to bring you in as a token, like Obama was. It's like, let's bring this mixed race guy. I won't even call him a black guy because I think it's pretty shameful that Obama loves to play the race card on his black half, but rarely talks about the fact that he's half white. And I do appreciate that Trump brings up that he's Barack Hussein Obama. So I've always felt like Rubio's like that, but obviously Rubio is actually legitimately intelligent, whereas we can see, especially in Obama's years after being out of politics, he's pretty much an idiot when it comes to a lot of things. And a lot of what he was doing was being driven by his cult of personality and being able to read really well off of a teleprompter. And just being portrayed, his marketing campaign was obviously fantastic. It was the first time that we saw a true social media marketing campaign on that scale. And then Trump took it to the next level in 2016 and 2024. And I think going forward, for better or for worse, that's all we're going to see. But I think even when, here we go, Rolo's going on one of his tangents again. When we see like what we're seeing with YouTube numbers going down with views and things like that, I think we're starting to see a saturation and an aging out of certain types of content. So it'll be interesting to see in the era of AI where you can't trust anything that you see, or you must use AI to really push things further and to be even more bombastic, bold, and crazy than ever before. You're going to see a degradation in the voter base and kind of what their attention span is. But we've got a strange split, right? Because on the one hand, we have the true TikTok and Shorts generation where people only pay attention to short form content, and then we have the people that have pushed back upon against that. They've started educating themselves more and more, and they appreciate authenticity and long form discussions. But at the same time, I almost feel like the people that appreciate long form discussions are the ones that are tuning out more and more, and they're kind of getting tired of all the BS that we're seeing. So I don't know where everything is going to go. I don't have a crystal ball within that. I'm not going to complain about how the YouTube algorithm and all that stuff works because I don't even know, and I know I don't produce enough content to really see a change there. So maybe as I do more, I'll see differences there, and I can see different types of trends. Okay, so people are checking out of politics, and I think when you see, to bring this back towards Tucker a little bit, when you see so many people that have become obvious grifters or something really insane is going on, and we'll dive into that a little bit deeper here in a few minutes, it becomes very discouraging. And I think let's take like the entertainment space. I need to really pivot back into the gun community a lot more than I have, because that's where I cut my teeth, and honestly, that's where I learned so much about politics, about how the sausage is made, so to speak, and where I've really made a lot of friends who are mentors in everything that I've done over the past few years. So in the gun space, I don't feel like, and maybe somebody can correct me, but I don't feel like you see the same stagnation that we're seeing in the political commentary and kind of the entertainment commentary space, where because the fight for the Second Amendment is perpetual, the left always wants to take our guns, but we're always making a little bit of headway as well. And it's constantly an uphill battle, and there are catastrophic and horrific events that can happen that bring it back to the forefront, that, you know, put the gun community kind of on the defensive. And the gun community had to fight against censorship on YouTube for years before we saw, you know, First Amendment censorship. So I want to you know, kind of separate that from where we're seeing the political commentary and entertainment space. It seems like that's always flourishing and thriving. There's interpersonal drama there. I've seen a lot of it, and people get into beefs, and it's usually over stupid things like sponsorships and shilling for different corporations. If somebody got guns for free and they're doing paid reviews, but that happens in almost anything with YouTube, right? Anytime that you review products, there's a chance for bias. I've heard of the drama that like makeup channels have had and things like this, that I would have been like, wait, where is this coming from? Like, this is wild what we're seeing here. In like the political space, I feel like, especially on the right or the non-woke side, so much of it was based on the grievances of where we saw the entertainment and politics and the censorship from the left, that a lot of people jumped on that bandwagon. Or when we started winning victories, it became such a lucrative grift that people didn't know where to go. And now that we have won things, and some of it became a little bit of a fatigue, right? Where as we started gaining more and more victories socially on that side, if you wanted to make money in that space, you had to start digging for drama or really nitpicking about small things. That's where I started getting a little bit tired of it. And that's why I didn't talk about a lot of things for a while when I kind of got out of that space. Because I mean, even being on some shows, I'm just like, I don't care. I really don't care. We know that these people are woke. We know they're going to be woke, and we're already hurting them in the pocketbook, and we're seeing the degradation here. So I don't need to talk about how the newest Star Wars is woke. Star Wars is already freaking dead. And unless they do a 180 degree turnaround here, this is not going anywhere. So there's no point to me watching it and making fun of it. You guys already know it's bullshit. I already know it's bullshit. So how many times can we talk about this? Let's start creating something new. That's why over anybody, I respect what Eric and other guys like Jay have done in creating their own comics and books and getting out there, because really that's the solution to that space. We can't complain about these corporations that they don't care. They're burning the money because it's an ideological view. They're like the Joker, and there's not much that we can do there. We've got to win major victories. And then once we start winning the victories, it's like, well, then we're just getting nitpicky about certain things. Like, oh man, this game has like generic characters, but if you play the game, like nothing controversial really is going on here. And it's just like, all right, man, like I don't really know what to say. So it gets boring after a while, is really where I'm going with that. And in politics, it seems like that's how it is. We start gaining victories, and then we get this massive split that just goes off of the deep end. So that's really what I'm getting at. And with Tucker, now we can start talking a little bit about Tucker. My problem with Tucker hasn't been going after Trump or even the I mean, you could argue that a lot of it's anti-Semitic. I just thought that was just kind of being crazy and disingenuous. And I was like, okay, He's got connections with Qatar. He's getting money with that. It seems fairly obvious where this agenda is coming from. So that's discouraging and it's very bothersome. But it seems like it's coming from an obvious perspective. But when we get to the point now where Tucker's basically becoming an Islamic apologist, that's where I have a serious problem with all this. And that's where his credibility is completely thrown out the window for me. And I won't defend him. And I think that he should become a pariah. Like the good work that Tucker Carlson did before he started going down the Israel is the blame for everything path. And especially now after he's going with, well, not only is everything Israel's fault, but Islam is actually really awesome. And we shouldn't be going against Islam and all of this. That's where I have a serious problem with all this, because it goes off. And when you start listening to Tucker, especially when he had that interview a little bit over a year ago, where he felt like he was basically being attacked by a demon, I think it's fairly obvious what happens there if we're talking about a spiritual warfare perspective, because Kongman Lee, I don't know if you guys follow him. Kongman he's been in the circuit. I think he works for Benny Johnson now. I met Kongman when he hung out. I played Fortnite with Kongman before and I've been on shows with him before. Got to meet him. Kongman's a nice guy. Very, very outspoken when it comes to Christianity. You know, he started talking about like, where's this Islam apologism coming from on the right? And this is why I have no respect for Andrew Tate. You know, besides a lot of the things that he says, it's like, look, man, if you're being a Christian man and you're trying to go down the straight and narrow, like Andrew Tate is not your dude. And again, I have a real issue. I have a real issue with anyone. And I know some people will say this, and I'm sure many of you have seen it. It's like, yeah, but what he says about this other stuff is, no, I don't really give a shit what they say about these other things, because they're so completely wrong about this one issue that it taints everything else. And it makes it very easy to see what they're doing. They're trying to manipulate people. And I've ran into a lot of people like this as I've gotten into social media and content creation, where you'll hear people say one thing publicly, and then behind the scenes, they're complete hypocrites, or they actually don't care. They're chasing the algorithm. They're trying to get clicks. They're just gaslighting people on purpose to cause drama. Thankfully, I haven't worked with too many people like that, but you run into them, right? Like you see them in different social circles when you go to events and things like that. And you're just like, holy crap, like these people are actually full of crap. So I don't respect anybody that does that. So Tucker Carlson, I really don't care if a lot of the other things he said are right, because now he's gone so far off the path and he's so wrong about this particular issue that it basically discredits his body of work. And it makes you wonder if there was any sort of legitimacy here or what happened. And I do think it is spiritual warfare manifest. So that's what I responded to Kongman's post. I said, number one, it's satanic. Number two, it's about money. But a lot of times when you follow the money, it makes it easy that certain things are demonic and satanic, because there's no other logical thing. When you see such a vehement level of vitriol that doesn't seem to have any logical basis, that's when you start wondering, okay, if it's not logical and this person clearly is intelligent, or they've shown that, and it doesn't even seem like a normal manipulation, especially when it's contradictory to positions that they've had in the past, it makes you really wonder, okay, this must be some sort of spiritual thing that's going on here. Either this person is on drugs and they've gone totally crazy, which that doesn't seem like what's happened with Tucker Carlson, or yes, there is some sort of influence here that is darker, because there is no logical basis on this, even if greed was involved here, because it's such a huge flip. So that's what I think happened with Tucker. And you can see kind of the track record of where Tucker has gone from, especially since 2025, which is, you know, a submission, you know, he talks about submission to God. His speech, A Turning Point, attacking millions of Americans because they're Muslims, is disgusting. and I'm a Christian, not a Muslim. I mean, he started coming out really, really, really hard in defense, and I think that, and I'll talk about Trump, and I think how stupid his tweet was with the AI generated thing, and his rollback of saying that he thought he was a doctor. That's all BS, man. Like, we know Trump is a lot smarter than that. We can't simultaneously give Trump credit for things and then allow him to get away with that kind of stuff too. And look, I've got some major criticisms of the Pope, and we'll discuss that too when I start talking about Trump, because I think that we've had two popes in a row that are woke, and they undermine the spread of the gospel. And I think that this Pope does that. There's a reason why I think it is so. There's a reason why people still leave the Catholic Church. People love the Catholic Church because, everybody believes that, hey, the Catholic Church was the original church, right? The Roman Catholic Church, and then we had our schisms and breakups and all this stuff. But, we used to have Pope, and not that popes haven't been corrupt in the past. Obviously, popes were sold out. They were bought by kings. They were intimidated. They didn't stand up to certain real injustices throughout the world when they should have in different periods of history. And, we've had, splits and schisms within the Catholic Church of having popes and anti-popes and things like that going on for nearly 2,000 years already. And the Catholic Church has had its scandals with trying to cover up for their sex scandals and all this stuff. But, there's no denying, even if you're a Protestant or if you're an Orthodox, like, there's a lot more things that we have in common we as Christians than we do uncommon. And we sure as hell have a lot more in common as Christians than we do with the Muslims. And I would say we do obviously more than Judaism either, but more than half of our Bible is the Old Testament. So, I mean, we have a lot in common with the Jews as well. They just missed the boat on the Messiah coming here, and they got to figure that out, because it's going to cause them some problems. Especially when it comes to their salvation. But anyway, Islam is basically the inversion and the antithesis of Christianity. And so when you start endorsing Islam, or you start trying to say, like, we need to make peace with Islam, I mean, you could say, like, we don't want to antagonize people and we don't want to create conflict that's unnecessary. But I don't think that we have to apologize to Islam or try to make any roads in that, unless our inroads are to the Muslim world itself. And that is to convert people from Islam, show them that they believe in a demonic religion that is an inversion of Christianity, and it's based on hate and destruction, whereas Christianity is based on love and salvation and grace. So there's a huge difference there. And I think that when you start showing people, and we've been seeing that happen more and more, there's a great clip, I wish I had it, of a lot of imams going crazy because apparently there is a large revival that is happening in the Middle East. And I think it would have to do with the internet, that as more and more young Muslims realize that they're set on a path towards destruction and that their leaders would use them to do demonic and suicidal things in the name of a pedophile, of a pedophile in Muhammad, who clearly was doing the bidding of Satan, that, they start figuring out, like, hey, wait a second, this is pretty jacked up. Maybe I should follow these Christians. So, that's where you now completely lose me with Tucker Carlson. I already didn't buy into all this other stuff. You guys know where I stand on the Israel stuff. I don't look at Israel necessarily from the religious perspective, other than the location in Jerusalem. I don't know if any of the prophetic things with Israel as its modern iteration are going to happen. Clearly, at the end of the Bible, this all does happen, and Israel has to come back, the third temple and all this stuff. But, you can't bring that up. That's all in God's time. It's not like you can just say, like, we're gonna bring this upon ourselves. Like that. That's not how it works. God can extend the clock, or the clock is already written the way that he wants it. And anybody that tells you when revelation is going to occur and Jesus' second coming is going to happen is crazy. They don't know what they're talking about at all. So I don't buy into that type of theological prescription. However, I don't think that the Jews are the root of all evil, like a lot of people said, and I don't ascribe to those conspiracies, because I think you can't have it both ways. Where I think that if the U.S. wasn't in the picture in a lot of these Middle Eastern conflicts, I think that Israel probably would have annihilated most of the Middle East on their own anyway. So I don't really, who's wagging the dog's tail on that one. I think it's kind of a mutual thing. I think we use Israel as our attack dog because they're the only country that's willing to go all in on a lot of this stuff, and they can do things for us that we can't, like basically performing assassinations that may be very convenient for us, and decapitating the entire leadership of Iran, when that's not something that really the U.S. likes to do. That we think that's a little bit unseemly, to kill certain leaders sometimes, until Trump. So I don't think you can have it both ways. I think there's influence that goes in both directions here. If you want to say that the intel agencies are really the ones that are in charge of this stuff and they're influencing all the civilian leaders or even holding them hostage, yes, we can argue with that too. But clearly the CIA is pretty damn good at doing a lot of stuff as well. So you can give Mossad credit. I don't think you can take away credit from the CIA either. And again, as Americans that want smaller government, how is it that many of us have been talking about, at least I know I have been, about the deep state and all these things for years? And then we're like, and then all of a sudden, a lot of these people are like, well, but it's the Israelis that are like in charge of everything. I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. So the U.S. government wasn't like evil this entire time, and we didn't do all these things because modern Israel's only existed since 1948. And a lot of this stuff that happened was after that. So I think I think that's an issue that's not something you can reconcile. There's a big game being played here, and everybody's trying to influence it. And the Islamic countries, the Chinese, and the Russians are all playing this game, and they've all got their own influence. And if you think the Europeans aren't doing it either, even though they're a joke when it comes to the way that they've run their countries from a societal level, this is major world power games here, and everybody's trying to blackmail everybody, and everybody influences each other. So I can't give full credit to a small country in the Middle East and say that these guys are the root of all evil. That's ridiculous, and that's preposterous. And I think that's taking away a lot of that's taking a lot of other people off the hook too within our own country that have done horrendous things. And let's not forget that a lot of the persecutions that Christians and Jews have had to deal with, especially in the 20th century, were perpetuated by a lot of Americans like Margaret Sanger and the eugenicists that existed in the early 1900s, who they're the ones who gave the Nazis the ideas that they eventually implemented within the Holocaust, and the other thousands and millions of people that they exterminated beyond just the Jews. And it's also taking away a lot of the, this Holocaust denial stuff and all this stuff is ridiculous. And so is, the same way that the left basically shrugs off and says, like, they never talk about communism and how the tens of millions of people that the communists have killed. I think you're going down the same path. It's like, look, this is all evil shit. It's demonic. We can't shrug this all off. And yes, there are individuals that do a lot of bad things. There are a lot of prominent Jewish bankers and business owners and a lot of other things. There's a lot of people that have called themselves Catholic and Christian throughout history and that run the countries and run this government. And they're definitely not Christians if you look at them theologically. Just like I think a lot of these people that are Jews are not religious Jews either. They might be ethnically, or they might like to call themselves that, but it's clear that they have no sort of moral, they've got no sort of moral foundation. They've got no sort of moral foundation that any sort of, Christian or Judeo-Christian principle would endorse. So I think a lot of that goes out the window when you start looking at this as a vast conspiracy. And I also couldn't blame people. See, I also think it's interesting that people get mad when the Israelis, or if you want to say Jewish people, circle the wagons but now, we have a lot of racism against white or Anglo populations in the United States and throughout the West. And it's like, well, I don't think it's wrong for people to rally and push back against that. That's what the Jewish people and the Israelis did themselves too. So clearly, it's like we'd be hypocrites to say like, look, I'm going to look out for my own, and if I can learn some lessons along the way, I'm going to do it. We see Asian communities do this. We see Hispanic communities do this. I don't have a problem with white communities doing it, as long as you're not pushing like hatred and all this stuff along the way. I don't think that there's a problem with that. So it's just interesting to see, like, it's almost like a kind of like, wow, man, it's really like if we could get away with doing that too, we would like to do it too, but we can't, and so we're angry about it. That's just kind of how it seems when I start thinking about it. And that's why I don't really try to ascribe towards the tribalism. And I always hated it when I started going into the Second Amendment community, because I saw the lack of tribalism once it got into brass tacks. There's a story that I love to tell of when I finished. I used to go to this great event that was thrown by Kevin Dixie, huge friend of the channel, one of my probably one of my top mentors when it came to getting into politics and really learning about race history in the United States. Kevin is black. You guys have seen him many times. If you remember the old podcast, I need to bring him on, because every time that Kevin is on the show, we go for like 3-hour conversations about everything. And he always makes you think. And I've got nothing but respect for him. But he has an event that he throws every year called Train and Learn, typically during Memorial Day weekend. And it's a 3-day event. Any of you can go. If you want to sign up, it's in Atlanta now, which makes it a lot more accessible. It used to be in St. Louis. The last time I went, it was in St. Louis. And I remember getting out of that event. It's for anybody that wants to be a Second Amendment advocate, that's a Second Amendment influencer, or people that are in the gun industry in general. And you spend a day in the classroom talking about social media marketing, being able to advocate for the Second Amendment in the political arena. So speaking at your legislatures, speaking to your congressmen and women, senators, executive branch officials, anything like that. Learning from real advocates. And then you get 2 days of a day of pretty intense firearms training. It could be it would be firearms and hand-to-hand combat. We even had like knives, melee weapons, and all that stuff. And I'm sure that Kevin has expanded it even beyond that over the years. And then the last day is pretty much putting it all together. Everyone can collaborate. You can film, and then you give away awesome stuff. I remember getting a lot of ammo. So I think it's I think that one of the things that I walked away from at that event is when we left the second night to go out to dinner, we had, to use the word that everybody seems to hate, we had the most diverse group of characters that I'd ever seen before, especially considering that they were all strapped. So we went out in Missouri, outside of St. Louis. We went to like a family restaurant. It was like a local Friendlies, if you've heard of that chain. And it's like a big banquet hall. They sell a little bit of everything, a big family restaurant. And we had Latinos, black people, white people, everything in between, different economic backgrounds, different social backgrounds as far as rural and urban. So different demographics all across the board, not just racially. And we pretty much had all gotten off the range, so we didn't have a chance to change. So we probably needed to take showers because we were out in the heat, but nobody cared because we're just like, we're hungry. Let's go out to this place. And Missouri is an open carry state. So we were strapped with ammunition, with magazines, our guns strapped to our hips. And we're going out to a family restaurant. I just remember a lot of families looking at us like we were kind of crazy, just because it was just wild to see this eclectic group of people. And I remember the local cops were checking us out too, like, what's going on? Like, what's the deal here? But everybody was more curious about anything else because clearly they saw, like, this isn't a normal group of individuals. This doesn't look like anything. We don't even know what this is. Like, what is going on here? Who are these people? And we sat at a table. There were like probably 15 or 20 of us. And everybody, that was sitting around us asked us questions. The cops were talking with us. And we kind of talked about, the event and everything that was going on. And it was just such a great example of like, this is really what America's all about. And then at the end of the night, we were back on the range one of those days. We had a bonfire, and then we had bourbon and whiskey tasting, cigar smoking, and night vision with full auto guns. And you could kind of choose what you wanted. Obviously, if you wanted to shoot, you'd shoot first, and then you could drink afterwards. If you drank, you were done, because we're not going to let people shoot full auto guns at night if they're intoxicated. So, but that just really exemplified what America's all about, breaking stereotypes, and really what I think that's what real, true diversity of ideas is like. Because you had people that were disaffected liberals. Now, through the Second Amendment, a lot of people, maybe they'd be more socially liberal, but they definitely weren't when it came to freedom of speech or the Second Amendment. And honestly, once you start moving down the path of being a business owner and believing in more freedom, you really don't. You become less and less government oriented. So you're going to shift to the right inevitably. There's just no way around it. As you become more educated, you become exposed to people that achieve great things and that give back to their community and have a moral compass. You're just going to become more libertarian minded and then conservative minded as it goes along. I just don't see how you could be any form of the left in any way, because even if you believe in charity and helping people out, which is totally fine, you start realizing, well, the more money that I make, I can give money to the people and causes that I care about. I can help the homeless. I can contribute to my church. I can give to charities that I actually care about, rather than a government taking away a massive percentage of my paycheck and then giving it to everything. And I might be opposed to foreign intervention. I may be opposed to socialized healthcare or giving money to illegals and all this stuff. So everybody that's like, that moves away from, even a lot of these soft, Christians name only, they're like, well, because I've heard this from certain Christians that have kind of fallen out of their churches. And then they're like, oh, nobody actually wants to tithe or give to the poor and all that stuff. I was like, well, that's probably a problem for your church, right? You got to find another church, because your priest or pastor is not doing a good enough job of articulating why this is important. And you need to be volunteering if your church has outreach. And if your church doesn't have outreach to help the needy, I don't know, that's kind of a strange church to me. And those are things that you can do as an individual. And as you gain more success, there are things that you should do, because then that takes away our reliance on government, and it shows what it means to be a Christian, just a good person, and not be a hypocrite either. Because the less that we do to help our own communities ourselves through our individual sacrifice and setting an example for others, because wealth is not a bad thing, and gaining more money is not a bad thing. You just want to pay it forward. And I think mentorship and charity is fantastic. And I'm not going to go down, look, whether you think salvation comes from works or, through grace, eventually you do more works. That's a theological debate that we can get between Christians and Protestants, but it's not even that big of a deal, because I think you kind of come to the same conclusion, no matter what form of, what sect of Christianity you're in, is you should use your principles and morality to pay it forward and to help other people. I think that that's just pretty common sense if you're a Christian. It's kind of like what it's all about, right? Saving people and helping them out, and having charity when it comes to that. That's not what's going to save you ultimately. I don't believe that. I think you're saved through grace, and acceptance of Jesus Christ as your Savior. But if you want to live like Jesus, you're going to do good things and you're going to try to help people as much as you can. But, there even comes a point where if people don't want to be helped or they shun you, then yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And even there are a lot of circumstances that you can see in the Bible where, Jesus is like, look, follow me. And then if you didn't, he's just like, well, I'm not going to try to like keep persuading you on this. But that's just how it works. So you help people that want to be helped, or you try to show them the way. Ultimately, if they spit in your face, then there's not much you can do about it. But all of this being said, is what Tucker Carlson is pushing here is anti-Christian. There's no doubt about it. And pushing on Islam, talking about Sharia law, his comments, the comments from Tucker Carlson Network saying that Muslims love Jesus. No, Muslims don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah, so they are fundamentally flawed in their thinking. They do believe that he was a prophet, but prophets under Islam cannot be liars. So there's already a theological conundrum that they have to deal with, where it's like, okay, you believe the guy was a prophet, but you don't believe in the crucifixion and resurrection, the death on the cross and the resurrection. So, and he said that he is the Son of God and God incarnate, our Lord. So you're calling him a liar. A prophet can't be a liar according to your religion. So this is a major contradiction, and this is clearly BS. So what you're saying is heresy. So I don't give you guys credit for acknowledging the existence of Jesus. Even atheists and pretty much everybody in the entire world that understands history and can read that knows that Jesus was a real person. What it comes down to from a religious perspective is, do you believe that Jesus died for our sins and was resurrected afterwards? That's the entire basis of Christianity. And if you do not believe that, you don't get credit from me as a Christian. You don't. Because like I said, atheists know that Jesus was real. So that's where I believe. And yes, what Tom said is true. This is where the Pope drives me crazy, because here's the Pope again trying to make inroads and talk about Islam and then talk about people. And he's not talking about sin. He's completely passing all of that by. And that's why he is a woke Pope. And that's the problem that I have with him. We had that bishop from Africa that was calling out on the evils of Islam and saw the persecution of Christians throughout Africa and how they were being martyred and killed. And this Pope is just trying to make peace and inroads with Islam. No, this is a time that we need to be pushing Christianity further and understand that we are in a spiritual war. We're in a spiritual war. This Pope is more concerned, and the Pope before him are more concerned about political correctness and woke BS and being considered nice. This is the problem with modern Christianity, that we've seen this. And the evangelicals and Protestants are victims of this too. And if anything, we see more of these weird, warped, woke churches, because at least I haven't seen the rainbow jihadist flags. And when I say the rainbow jihad, I'm talking about the LGBTQ, the gay fascist movement that's been permeating, and the gay communists have been permeating our society. That's another faction of demonism and Satanism that we're dealing with here. So this is something that we have to look at too. You see, so all these apostate churches that have, gay or female pastors. And I'm just like, no, this is not how this is going to work. This is woke BS. And they basically preach motivational, nice stuff. Like, let's talk about all the nice things that Jesus did, but we're not going to talk about sin. We're not going to talk about repentance for sin. And we're not going to talk about all of these other things. And you can talk about like, hey, being gay is not okay as far as being a Christian. However, that does not mean that you cannot be saved or redeemed. Redemption is a huge part of that. But they only talk about, oh no, we don't want to say things that are going to make people feel bad. We don't want to do all these things. It's the Pottery Barn churches that we see everywhere. So I think that that's how it is. And yes, Den Haken mentions he's a Jesuit. Yeah, I mean, the Jesuits are kind of push all of this and it has to do with like liberation theology and everything like that, which is another issue I have with that sect, especially when it comes from South America, South American Catholicism, where it's almost like the poor must exist in order for us to do works that then bring us salvation. It's like, I don't think that it works that way. And that seems like really like, I don't agree with that. That seems pretty wrong. Just like in the United States, a lot of Protestant churches push the prosperity gospel, which is basically like Jesus wants you to be rich and he's going to reward you with wealth, as long as you believe and all this stuff and say your glory, hallelujah. The Joel Osteen kind of motivational speaking crap. So there's a lot of apostate teachings that are anti-Christian within supposed Christian and Catholic circles. We see this everywhere. Now, to the Jesuits' credit, the Jesuits spread the gospel probably further throughout the world than anybody else. Like when you start realizing in all the far-flung nations of the world where the gospel was taken, a lot of them were Jesuits. They did. Now, I don't know where the Jesuits started going a little bit wrong and woke along the way, but that's an argument to be had, and I'm not educated enough on that yet to really go down that path. I know a little bit to be dangerous. I know enough to know what is wrong and seems like theological hypocrisy, but you can see where you've got these factions within the Catholic Church and within the Vatican, and you can see which ones are definitely being influenced by stuff that is like, no, that's not going to work. There are still a lot of great born again priests that know the gospel and that don't preach this stuff and that are not woke at all. I wish they were the ones in charge, and I wish this Pope was one of them, but it seems like this is what we're dealing with again. And that being all said, it was very stupid for Donald Trump to jump and post the meme that he did. I'm not going to sit here and cry like a lot of other people and be like, oh my gosh, like this disqualifies him and it's all these. I'm not going to pearl clutch and do things like that because I know Trump is Trump. I will slightly reverse on what I said earlier about Trump not being an idiot. Trump is an idiot when it comes to certain things. And that is, and his ego gets in the way. He gets butthurt by a lot of stuff, and he's just got to get the last word in. This is where Trump, despite being 80 years old, is extremely immature. And this frustrates me a lot of times. And this is where, say what you will about J.D. Vance, when it comes to politicking and articulating the principles that this administration stands for, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, and Marco's probably not really a MAGA guy, but he's playing the game very well. They are much better communicators of MAGA principles or what Trump's current, geopolitical plan is right now than Trump himself. And they don't get into stupid, unnecessary fights. They're able to dominate and dunk on our adversaries while maintaining the moral high ground. Trump always jumps into the mud and he creates unnecessary difficulties for himself. So him portraying himself like Jesus or even a pontiff in that meme is just really stupid. Like, you don't need to do that just because the Pope is baiting you and you're taking it personally when he talks about war and all these things. It's like, dude, you don't know enough to jump into this as a theological discussion. Take the L, especially because so many Catholics do support you because they're like, oh my gosh, at least we have an administration that's not adversarial towards Christianity in general anymore. At least we don't have to worry about that. And J.D. Vance is a Catholic as the VP. So, you gain a lot of support there. You don't need to jump down this path. Even Protestants are like, dude, like this is an L, man. Like, how stupid can you be to do this? This is really ridiculous to post something like this. Like, first of all, the borderline people that are moderate are going to find it offensive. And everybody else is just going to be like, you're just an idiot, man. Like, this is just freaking stupid. And I think you can only lose when you do that. Instead of taking the high ground and being like, look, with all due respect to the to the Pope, you know, I appreciate the work that the Catholic Church does and the good that it does in the world. But I think that when it comes to politics and dealing with geopolitics and the complexities of what is going on, the Pope is just not, he doesn't understand, or he's not privy to the information that I am in order to make a determination in all this. And I respectfully disagree with the criticisms that he may have about this. And he's wrong. You can just do it like that. So, yes, I get that, TFM, but we can't give Trump credit on one thing and then the other. And then I heard him talk about it today, and he's like, oh, yeah, I thought it was like me as a doctor. I'm like, dude, like, can you see how that, like, if you were, oh, yeah, like I was Red Cross and all this stuff. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not buying that. You're smarter than that. Yeah, I saw it as a Saint Trump meme. That's more what I saw, but it still was like one of those things. It's like, dude, like unnecessary. Like, you can take the high ground. You can still dunk on your adversaries. This isn't the one that you want to dunk on either. I think that JD's rebuttal, and especially Tom Homan's rebuttal. Tom Homan is also a Catholic. You know, Tom Homan did a great job where he basically is like, with all due respect to the pontiff, I see what a lot of these people that are suffering, like, because the pontiff has criticized, you know, how we handle immigration and all this stuff. And he's like, look, you don't understand what I see, the human trafficking, the suffering that I see, the murders that I've seen of both people that are trying to get to the United States and people that were victimized by illegals that came here and committed criminal acts and murdered American citizens. It's like, you don't see all of that. So respectfully, like, before you start weighing in on this, maybe you should educate yourself a little bit more about this. They did a much better job. So I think that's ridiculous. And yes, you can't just go into the Vatican and do all these things. So there's a lot of hypocrisy here, but there's also different ways to handle it. You know, at the end of the day, when we're dealing with satanic principles on the left and our enemies, because that's really what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with godlessness, immorality, Islamic fascism, and basically everything that is anti-Christian and anti-American is what we're dealing with right now. It's against our founding principles. It's against our moral principles. It's against our religious principles. That is what the left stands for. That's what Islam is. That's what all the gay race communism is all about. And communism is an atheistic ideology as well. The last thing that we need as Christians on all sides of this is to turn against one another. Once we deal with the guy, because at the end of the day, the jihadis are going to decapitate us in the name of Muhammad, whether you pray the rosary or you think that what Luther nailed to the door in his complaints about the Catholic Church are right or wrong. They don't see us as different sects. Like, they're not going to look at this and be like, well, the Catholics and the Protestants disagree on these theological principles, or they pray about things certain differently. Like, broadly, we believe the same thing. Jesus Christ is our Savior. We believe in the Holy Trinity. We've denied Gnosticism, which is what Tucker Carlson's almost going back towards, that Gnostic viewpoint, which the church had to deal with that in like the 1st and 2nd century. And that's why we had all of these, the Council of Nicaea and all that. Like, we dealt with that stuff a long time ago, and that's pretty much settled. We can still debate a lot of other things, but these people hate Christianity in general and want to see us destroyed. They hate our principles, which are Christian principles that founded this country. So we need to spend a little less time fighting one another as Christians. We can worry about that after our enemies are eliminated or subdued. That's the way that I look at it. So I don't know. So again, not something that Trump should have waded into. JD and Homan did a much better job of doing damage control. There are just some fights where Trump has a history of bringing people into his administration that are either really good or really bad. There doesn't really seem to be anybody that's like mediocre or in the middle. Your really good guys are your JDs, are your Rubios, and your Homans. They're doing a good job. Steve Miller does a great job as well of articulating his ideas. Bessent does a good job. When there are certain debates that are being had about certain things, let those guys be your attack dogs and just ignore the other BS. Trump, for better or for worse, and this is why people loved him, but it's also why sometimes it's like, I love somebody who's a fighter. I hate the lack of discipline. The lack of discipline bothers me because it is so easy. And as somebody who's been in the political battle space against the left for nearly a decade now, it is so easy to dunk on our adversaries without taking L's at the same time from your own side, that the fact that he still hasn't completely figured this out bothers me, especially when it seems like he is playing 4D chess when it comes to a lot of things. This is when it's like, dude, you're just being these are unforced errors. So that's no problem, Chad. I know you guys are saying a lot of things in there. I've gone on a 1 hour and 12-minute opening monologue about all this stuff. Again, I don't know how this happens. I start the show and I've got topics that I want to go down on. I don't know how fully I'm going to articulate them or what the rant is going to be. I even forgot that it was Wednesday earlier today. And now I go on like a crazy 72-minute rant about all this stuff. So yeah, Tucker's gone. Tucker's basically dead to me at this point with all with the Islam apologism. I don't care about anything else that he says that we can agree with. He's using that as a smokescreen to try to pull you down a dark path. That's the way it is. Just like Andrew Tate. Doesn't matter all the things that Andrew Tate says about starting a business or the Matrix is coming after him or, being strong and masculine. It's all bullshit. The dude went down the path of Islam. I really don't care. Like, that destroys everything else for me. There are a lot of other people that articulate a lot of these principles. And honestly, if you want to get into a theological discussion about Judaism and modern Israel, even if I disagree with a lot of those things, this is a debate that Christians have been having for like over 1,000 years. So there's plenty of other people that you can find out that have been asking these questions because they were asking it before modern Israel existed. And it's been a huge debate within Christian circles for decades. So even if it goes down the path of anti-Semitism or whatever you want to call it, or Tucker's not the one that you need to follow with all this stuff. There's other debates that you can go down this path. So, but that's neither here nor there. That's not a narrative that I ascribe to. But again, we just see. I think what I've gotten frustrated with the red pill right and with this faction that is breaking off. They say that they've taken the mantle of MAGA and that Trump has betrayed them. You can make a lot of other different arguments about disappointment with Trump without going off the deep end. And I feel like that's kind of where we are now, where there's very little nuance. Like, I can sit here and critique Trump, but basically realize the situation that we're in. It's like, we got nobody else for the next couple of years. So we can't jump off the train right now because essentially I can see some of the big picture moves that are being made here. I'm extremely frustrated, and I don't apologize for the mistakes that he's made. The Epstein list being number one and all of that. But at the same time, it's like we have no alternatives right now when it comes to this. So I'm not going to break away and give our enemies ammunition to take us out and to factionalize us even more. Because at the end of the day, we see the coalition of evil that they have. They stand for anti-Americanism and anti-Christianity. That is what the left, Islam, and the communists stand for. Those are our enemies. If you want to just distill it down to the communists and the Islamofascists, that's kind of the broader term. But let's call them the gay race communists, and the jihadis. They stand for everything that all of us believe in this coalition. And they do not discern between the differences that we have in our own factional things. So we can hang together, or we can hang separately. That's where it's going to go. If we stick together in many ways, that doesn't mean selling out, but not going down the Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, or Tucker Carlson side, which is at a minimum an op, and at a maximum that is spiritual warfare manifest. That this is, Satan is looking at the world as it is right now, and he's like, all right, I see that Christianity is on the rise. There's a revival here. More people are going to churches, whether they're Protestant or Catholic churches, than ever. We're starting to see young people turn to the Lord again. I think Charlie Kirk did a fantastic job, and the greatest, that is the greatest single loss that we've had on the right in years. Years was losing Charlie Kirk, because Charlie was the best ambassador that we had for conservative principles, articulating what is going on in the right, and Christianity and traditional values that we had. And now that he's gone, we're seeing, this fratricide on our side, is a political fratricide. And some people are being exposed. And I think that this is the devil making his move, right? We live in a fallen world, and ultimately we have free will. So God wants us to choose, but Satan's got influence on what goes on here, and he's going to make his counter moves. So I think that is something that we're dealing with, that we see, and that, we have to fight against. And I think really that is what is going on here. If you want the straight up truth of what I think it all is, I think it's beyond a grift. I think it is spiritual warfare. So that's what we're seeing. I agree, TFM. Candace has always been a leftist. Candace is the epitome of a grifter. She really is. She was on the left. She started seeing where the conservative movement was going and how desperate. Epic Mike had a good comment today, commenting on Dave Chappelle, talking about how Lauren Boebert took a picture of him and all this stuff. I think that Chappelle's also being chicken shit about the transgender thing and trying to act like he's not being mean. Transgenderism is demonic, and we got to push back against that. So, he's a punk ass in his own way when it comes to that stuff, but he's not wrong about how the desperation of the right, that when it's convenient, the right loves to hate against pop culture. They love to say race isn't important, but as soon as a celebrity or a minority starts espousing conservative principles, they just get hot and bothered by it. They're just like, oh my goodness. Or when we see like an OnlyFans star that supposedly becomes a Christian, look, I can't judge anybody if people have found the Lord and they repent. And that's true. That's amazing. But there's a lot of people that take advantage of the right-wing grift, because the right wing is so desperate for it. And one of the things that, again, my mentors in the gun community told me, be wary of people that start blowing smoke up your butt that are in the gun community, that are conservatives, because they are so desperate to have minorities be advocates that they will give you anything, but you're going to sell your soul to them in the process. And a lot of them won't give a crap about you. As soon as the gravy train is done, they're going to kick you to the curb, because they just want to use you to basically get rid of the racial narrative. Even if these people aren't racist, they're so reactionary to the left, and so desperate and so afraid of just calling the left out, that they're like, no, I've got Black and Hispanic friends, and look at these, like, I'm hip, I'm cool, guys. Like, look at that. That's where the right has always had a serious problem in hypocrisy. It's like, no, create your own culture. Let the ideas and principles stand for themselves. Don't be afraid when people that don't look like you jump into the arena. and don't talk the way that you do. Like, you're going to get people that know more about conservative values and conservatism that are going to look like they came off the streets. There's a lot of great people that I know like that, and that can articulate those principles to different demographic groups that you're not going to be able to penetrate. You know, a middle class or an upper class white dude is going to have more difficulty going into urban communities and having a credibility, rightly or wrongly. So you're going to need people that speak the language, so to speak, to espouse that. That's why, despite the fact that I hate the race politics, when I created the Locked and Loaded Latinos back in the day and I got into all this, I did target the Latin community because I knew that there was a lack of education when it came to people that were especially second or third generation that were being pulled by the left of teaching them American values and being able to speak to people in those communities. And that's why I also would go over the Constitution, or we went over the Constitution in English and in Spanish, because ultimately this is where Republicans have a problem, where it's like a conservative may be like, well, people need to learn English first. I don't want to deal with this. You know, why would I start articulating things in Spanish? They got to learn English and assimilate. It's like, I don't disagree with that. But right now, they don't know English. And I need to espouse the principles first of why they should be conservatives, why they should be proud to be Americans, what their rights are. And then they learn all these things at once. So I'm not just going to start denying people just because I'm not going to let perfect be the enemy of good or stand in my way of the message. That's the problem that I have. So I'm going to educate people in any way that I can first, and then you start pulling them in. So that's why I would do those things like that and go down that path of doing it. I think everybody's got to know, and that's the way it is, and we should have a national language. I think it's BS that we don't. It's ridiculous that if you look up, the U.S. doesn't have like an actual national language. It should be English, but they don't, and that's a prerequisite of working here. But there are a lot of people that I know that are more conservative when it comes to their moralistic values and the hard work they do, that became citizens the right way, and maybe their English is not very good looking because they worked on the other stuff first, and they lived in certain places where they didn't know. And it's like, well, I still want them to know the Constitution. I'm still going to teach these things. And there may be a lot of other people internationally that talk a lot of crap about the United States because they don't know jack. And if they hear people say the Constitution in a different language, they might be like, oh man, I never knew that. I didn't know that the Americans believed in all this stuff. So it's not even just trying to win hearts and minds within your own country. It is spreading that message. It's the reason why the Bible is, you want the Bible in as many languages as possible, right? So you do have to convey the message. You want the message to be conveyed correctly and bring people into your ideological fold first. It's like the factionalization within Christianity. It's like when our enemies are trying to destroy us and they don't care about our differences, we need to focus on strengthening our coalition and our alliance, because we have even more in common than they do on their side, yet somehow they're able to unify in their hatred and we can't do anything. And that's a serious problem. And I think that's been a detriment of the right the entire time. The right has a tendency to sometimes become puritanical in its beliefs. And it's like, we have to go all or nothing, and that is it. And again, it's a reaction to the left, because the left is willing to push so hard that we start becoming defensive, and we just become single-minded in that focus, when it's like, dude, we can't even agree amongst one another. So let's focus on what we do agree with and go down the path. So I think that's the way it is, and that's the approach that we would that we need to take there. We got to focus on what unifies us on this side against our enemies, And then, as we gain and win more battles and power, then obviously we can make things more perfect. Because it is about pushing America to where it should be based on its founding principles. So that's pretty much what I have to say about that. All right, so we talked about Tucker, talked a little bit about the Strait of Hormuz. I'm going to go back there now and shift over to the conflict in Iran. And we talked about Trump posting memes that he shouldn't, because it hurts him politically when he doesn't need to fight certain fights. And of course, we went down the theological path, which I find myself more and more going down that path, but it is what it is. That's where I am in life and where I'll continue to be. So I think now going on the more positive notes of what I think is going on here. I think the blockade is something that we should have done sooner if we were trying to win this. Now, I'm not privy to all the information that the president would be, but I think that, again, if you've been watching the show, I gave you what my theory was, and just based on the actions, because actions speak louder than words. And you could see the moves geopolitically that the Trump administration has been trying to make, and they all point to trying to destroy China as a rising power and stop them and prevent them from, trying to take that mantle away from us. So this is where America first becomes getting involved in different, getting involved internationally, whether we like it or not, because ultimately we have resources that we have to sell people. And our number one resource, our two greatest assets as the United States, are our natural resources and our ability to farm. Those are really the two biggest things that we've got. We have a lot of oil and we can produce a lot of food. We have access to two oceans, the two biggest oceans in the world. We're geographically protected because we only share borders with two large countries that are, even though they're not going down the right path, they're mostly stable. They have not yet fallen apart, and they still have a lot of influence, or we still have a lot of influence over them externally and internally. At the end of the day, if the Mexicans and the Canadians get too uppity and really start pissing us off, we're not going to let them get away with it, and we will get involved in their internal affairs to defend our own sovereignty, and they're extremely reliant on us for everything that they need. So that's pretty much where it is. So now that we are making our moves, we're starting to see that we're having an impact, right? I'd explained that this is why we went after the Panama Canal. We had to kick China out of the Panama Canal because we can't allow them easy access into our hemisphere and to start influencing countries in Central and South America and the Caribbean. That is absolutely unacceptable. We could not allow them to do to us what we were doing to them in the South China Sea and with the first and second island chains. Give them credit. I totally understand. You got to respect the game. And if you don't respect your adversaries or give them credit, then you are a fool for doing so. The Chinese were trying to make the moves that other global empires with aspirations have done throughout history, while also learning the mistakes that Europe and the United States had made with the benefit of hindsight. But they had a lot of disadvantages, natural resources being one of them, and their massive population being the other. And now it's possible that China's population has been overstated. I have heard some people start saying that China may not have like 1.4, 1.5 billion people. They may have a billion or even slightly less. And they're pumping those numbers up because they know that as a resource, their human wave is something that's very intimidating to a lot of people. So, just like their economy has been pumped up and the yuan has been pumped up, their currency, take everything that China has with smoke and mirrors. There's no doubt that China is probably the most dangerous single adversary from a from a state perspective that we fight against, that we're up against, especially because they're not stupid. They know how to play the game. They've not embraced. They started reversing from going full communist to their pseudo state controlled capitalism that they've got, because they understand that communism always fails. And in order to play in the global market and to look good to the West, they had to show, oh, yes, we're like pseudo capitalistic as well. I would not be surprised if India has the largest population at this point. India is another problem that we're going to have to deal with, but they're so fractionalized because of their caste system that I don't know if India will ever be quite the threat that China is or Islam is, just because they, they'll the lower castes will get mad at the Brahmins if they do too much, and they got their own weirdness in India that they've got to deal with. So, and right now we can still play the Indians against the Chinese to a certain extent. So, when it comes to kicking China out of our hemisphere, we had to make the move in the Panama Canal. We had to take the oil, secure the oil in Venezuela, and kick them out of there. Looks like we're making moves against Cuba. We've been doing it with the blockade, but now there's rumblings that we're finally going to make our last move against Cuba. So we'll see how that goes. We wanted Greenland. I don't know where Greenland is going to end up, but strategically we do need it from both a defensive perspective when it comes to protecting the homeland from possible ballistic or hypersonic missiles from China and Russia, and to also secure our natural resources that we need for high technology, which would be your rare earth metals, which China controls about 70% of them right now, and about 90% of the refining of rare earth metals. So those are obvious things of why we would want to control those things and who we want to control them against. So it's been about China the entire time. Now with Iran, that points to even more. It is the Asian markets that are getting hurt a lot more. That it's the Asian countries that are getting hurt a lot more than the United States is when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz being closed. Obviously, there are fertilizers, there are other materials like helium that come out of the Middle East as well that are going to have second and third order issues. But I do think more and more that it is becoming obvious that, like I've articulated, how we saw Tim articulate there, and how we're seeing more and more articles like this one, which we'll go over right now, where really this is about China, and it's all starting to come out right now. So let's read this. This is from the War Zone. Trump downplays Chinese concerns over Iran war's impact on its oil supplies. The friction between the U.S. and China over disruption in energy shipments the war in Iran has caused remains a major issue. Despite Beijing's rising anger over the war in Iran, a country upon which it relies heavily for oil, U.S. President Donald Trump has insisted his relationship with his Chinese counterpart remains strong. However, in a post on his social media network, Trump has also dismissed Chinese concerns that its energy situation is becoming more precarious as the result of strangulation of the Strait of Hormuz and U.S. blockade of Iranian ports. So, Latinx doesn't exist, Cerberus. You should know that by now. Latinx is such... That's a truly offensive term. That's where I will get offended by something like that. Trump said, China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. The American leader proclaimed on Truth Social, even as the flow of oil from the Middle East has been drastically reduced by the war, I'm doing it for them and the world. The situation will never happen again. They have agreed not to send weapons to Iran. Of course, look, we're all playing games here, right? I think Trump knows very much that the Chinese are trying to send weapons to Iran. They have sent weapons and technology to Iran. Uh, they're giving Iran targeting information with their satellites, just like we did that with Ukraine when it comes to their attacks. So I think that there's a game being played here, and we're trying to gain leverage against China, and I think the play is that Trump is going to use this against China in the negotiating table. Now, I think I don't want to negotiate with China again. Economically, we're going to suffer because, well, economically in the sense of being able to buy products, and a lot of our companies that have offshored to China are going to suffer. So it's like stock market pain and being able to rely on manufactured goods and pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are a serious problem, and that is where we have allowed China to get away with way too much. They shouldn't be producing the level of the percentage of pharmaceuticals that we rely on, that we do. That's a huge, drastic weakness that we have, greater than whether people can get computers and TVs at affordable prices and things like that. Those are, when we think about it, it's more high level luxury items in the grand scheme of things. We can survive paying double for TVs and for video game consoles and all this stuff. And I know I love it. Look, it sucks that if my computer dies right now, I basically can't afford to rebuild it the same way. It sucks that if, my Xbox or PlayStation, if any of that died, I'd have to pay $200 more to get a new one. That really sucks. That is our own fault as the United States, and you can blame it on the tariffs, but it's not. No, the only reason why the tariffs affect that is because we as the United States have allowed our companies to offshore overseas because we want cheap shit, and we know that the Chinese will use near slave labor in horrible working conditions to build things. Whereas even if we didn't have all the regulations in the United States, we know that if Americans were manufacturing these things, they would be doing it under conditions that, hey, even we wouldn't be okay with working with. So it doesn't matter at this point. This is the cost of doing these things. We need to bring more manufacturing back into the U.S. or at a minimum this hemisphere. If you want to also curb illegal immigration from Central and South America, I'd rather have factories built there, because let's be honest, this is the other truth here. As much as many of us here and in this chat may say, I'm willing to pay more to buy American, once you tell them how much everything will cost, if we were able to bring everything back into the United States, it would be a permanent cost increase, just because we have higher standards of living here. We do have laws that protect our workers. A lot of them aren't bad things. Let's be honest. We do expect certain benefits. We want to be able to retire. We have all these things that even many of us on the right really like. Economically, it is unfeasible to buy goods at the prices that we want them at, and to also make sure that we as workers or employees or even business owners have the benefits that we love. It's just a fact of the matter. We also don't want to destroy our country and pollute everything, because, unlike the Chinese, who don't have to give a crap about poisoning their people by dumping stuff, like look at the Chinese space program. They use highly toxic rockets. They have like benzene gas and all this crazy stuff. And the lower stages of their rockets fall on their populations, and they're toxic and poisonous. Like, we don't do that shit in the United States. So even the most conservative state is not going to allow that stuff to happen. And we as the American people aren't going to allow it either. We wouldn't tolerate it once we find out about it. So, like, for every time that there's like a Flint, Michigan or whatever situation where we do find out the companies or the government are doing bad stuff, we're like, no, we're not going to take that. When we have a train derailment and Biden tries to cover it up, we try not to do that. Doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that doesn't happen. But you know, we find it unacceptable. But at the end of the day, even if we get rid of most of the regulations that we agree are bureaucratic bullshit, or these taxes are ridiculous, and we bring things back up, we as Americans have higher standards as workers, and we have higher standards in what our wages should be. So we will never be able to make these products as cheaply. And there's an argument to be made that because so much manufacturing has been offshored to the US, there's no guarantee that American products, new American products, will be as good as some of the products that we've seen. And yes, everybody used to make fun of China and say their products are shit. They've basically been making a lot of the things that we buy now. They might be designed by Americans, but they're manufactured in China and Asia. And for the most part, it's gotten to the point where a lot of these products aren't garbage anymore. So that myth has been dispelled. So it will take time for American companies when it comes to building high-tech stuff. One of the complaints that we heard from TSMC when they started building their plant in Arizona and bringing some of those jobs there was the lack of expertise in chip manufacturing in the United States, and some of the work ethic that we have, because Americans and younger generations, a lot of them have been pushed by the woke bullshit too. And a lot of our peers that are going to be inheriting this stuff, we have to deal with the fact that a huge portion of our population, whether we like it or not, has been coddled. And that is our population. There's nothing we can do about that. For every young conservative that you have that's willing to bust their ass, like, we've got a lot of other people that are essentially useless. And so that's something that we have to deal with. And so we can't do all the jobs. We can't run all the businesses and do all the stuff as conservatives. Somebody's got to work and do that stuff. So we have to be willing to accept that we've got to take some of these jobs as well. We can't have our cake and eat it too. And that's going to take a time for us to learn, right? Because we haven't been doing some of these jobs for decades. So we have to relearn how to do a lot of these processes. So, and yes, we have to go against an education system that has undermined us every step of the way. So we have to be realistic about these things and how long it's going to take. We can't just say, screw you guys, we're bringing it all back here. Because honestly, the answer is probably going to be robots. That's what they're going to do. They're going to try to push AI and like Optimus robots to do a lot of this stuff instead. And then, you know, we're basically going to get hosed. I think realistically, as many jobs as they can automate, we can already see that corporations are going to do that. They're going to skip they're going to skip the entire step that we want and that we believed in. I think that's what they're going to try to do. Whether they're successful or not is a different story. Robots and AI are not going to be able to do everything, and it won't be practical for them to do everything. Even some menial labor jobs may still not be practical for a robot to do in the way that we see it in science fiction. But there are a lot of jobs that if they can replace the Asian pseudo slave labor or indentured servitude with automation, that's what they're going to try to do. So that's pretty much where it is. Yeah, Cerberus. I mean, it's pretty true, and I think that's where we've gone now. It's not entirely the fault of young people, because garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you go to schools where they tell you can be anything that you want, or you should expect all these things, or you have multiple generations telling you that, like, well, you just pull your stuff up by the bootstraps and you get a decent job and you just give a guy a handshake and work hard and you're going to do well. The world has changed. It's not that black and white anymore, because there's a lot of competition from illegal labor and countries that don't care about their citizens. So it's not just good enough anymore to just be a hard worker and to do all that stuff. So on the one hand, you've got the naive, and I'm sorry to call out the boomers, because I know that's the popular thing to do, but that's really the only term. And even a lot of boomers call themselves out, because the boomers also have the hippies. So you've got like a very black and white naive viewpoint of how the world used to be. and it was a lot simpler. We were also lied to, and eventually it was simpler and things did work that way. But as we as Americans, as our standards of living went up and we started becoming godless and selfish, we moved away towards just, hey, doing the right thing and working hard and trying to aspire to. Now it's just me, me, me. I want more. Conservatives are still partially to blame when it comes to this, because again, I've seen too much intellectual greed in a lot of ways. So it's not just like, I'm just going to hoard my money, and because I worked hard and I had to sacrifice, that means you have to too. I think that's a serious problem that we have. We have a problem of a lack of mentorship, and we do need more mentorship, because you do have to look at the plight of people. I'd love to live in a van down by the river. It'd be great. Or just in a van over here. Well, that's partially why I moved to Puerto Rico, because I'm just like, you know what? These are the views. I'm still in the United States, and I've got better views, and people are generally pretty nice and old school here. It's partially like 1990s America, but there's a lot of also left-wing stuff here that I have to contend with because of the poison from New York. But there's more conservative here in values than you'd think. At least where I live out in the boonies, man. And there's a lot of awesome expats that are coming here that run businesses and all that stuff, and they're pretty cool too. I love a lot of the people that I run into here, both the locals and people that have moved here. But there's a lot of New York politic idiocy that comes with it. Hopefully we'll get more of that Florida influence, because now there's more Puerto Ricans that live in Florida than in New York. And so you're starting to see a little bit of that shift. And I do know a lot of people who are engineers, entrepreneurs, and things like that, and that are hardcore conservative. I mean, those are the circles that I run with anyway. So, but I think I think we have to, we've got to turn against the narrative that a lot of these jobs are beneath us. And I mean, look how disrespectful is the left. The left loves to talk about, worker dignity and all this stuff. But what's their first pushback that they have anytime that you talk about eliminating, deporting illegals and all this stuff? Who's going to do all these other jobs? And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Do you have any idea what that sounds like? It's like you guys want an underclass in order for you to be able to live in this intellectualist utopia that can't exist. You want essentially like a true Hunger Games where you can intellectually talk about left-wing leftism and populism, but you have a permanent under or slave class that does all these menial things for you, and you somehow feel good about yourselves. It's like, no, that's like the worst of everything. It really is. There's no altruism. There's no charity there. That is pure racism, classism, elitism. All the isms that the left talks about is exactly what they actually believe in. But they're either too stupid to articulate it if you're one of the peons or a college student, or you know exactly what you're saying. And those are the Zoran Mamdanis and all these other people that are manipulating the rubes and the idiots to vote for them, or the uneducated illegals that they import in here that they try to get to vote without pushing voter ID, proof of citizenship, or by eliminating birthright citizenship. So we know the game that they're trying to play when it comes into that, and they're completely disingenuous about it. So again, this is why we have to unify against them. Because we know exactly what they stand for and what they're against. So at a minimum, we got to circle the wagons with that stuff, destroy them, from a political and ideological perspective, so that if anybody even starts espousing left-wing bull crap, we just start laughing at them, because we're like, that's so retarded. Like, haven't you seen? We've seen how this is. We've seen the thousands of times that this has been trying to be implemented. It fails every single time. So if you want to push this, you are a retard. And that's the word that needs to be used. I don't care if people find it offensive. It is an apt description for it. It's insane retardation to believe in left-wing communism, socialism, and all this other stuff. But then they like to try to dunk on you as a Christian and say like, oh, Jesus would have been a socialist and all these other. It's like, get out of here with that crap. No, there's get out of here with this stuff. And we know that you guys don't believe in this and you're not Christians anyway. So I'm not going to let you beat me over the head with my own moral viewpoint when we know you don't believe in it. So you have no leg to stand on here. So don't cut the crap with all that stuff. Like, I'm not going to let you moralize to me or shame me into all this stuff. And that's the problem. People on the right have been allowed themselves to be shamed. No, you can't allow yourself to be shamed by these people. They're ridiculous. So, you know, this is the direction that we have to move in, and we got to clean house here, and we can't let them shame us into. Can't allow it. We know what their motivations are. It's not going to work. Welcome back, Novella Princess. So, Novella Princess doesn't have a channel membership anymore. Like, what's up with that? It's kind of unacceptable, guys. I don't know what you guys are lacking here. Slacking and lacking. I'm also a terrible YouTuber. Smash the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Share the show with everybody you know. I do need to make more clips because the algorithm seems to reward short form content for better or for worse. That's just the reality that we live in today. That's why I've got to do the more full screen, unbranded thing so that I can put it in a short and it doesn't look bad. But hey, if that's how we bring people to the message and break through the noise, then it's the game that has to be played here. But if you want to support the channel, become a member. You can give a super chat. If you want to avoid the YouTube tax and punish YouTube, then you can circumvent all of that. You can see the links in the description. Never a requirement or something that I've relied upon, but it's always appreciated because it takes time to do this stuff. It really does. And so I appreciate it, and the cats do too, because the cats are the ones that ultimately benefit from it. Because I don't support anybody else but myself and the cats. So, and tonight we have, as always, presented here Ritsu. She's knocked out. She's always in the room with her father. She is my eldest cat. You guys don't give Ritsu enough love. You guys are obsessed with Mr. Moo. I love Mr. Moo. He's my boy. He's my only boy because my other two cats are female. But you guys gotta spread the love here. Like, look at this floofball. She's gorgeous. She's one of the most beautiful cats around. So, and Lucy too. Like, you guys don't know the deal about Lucy. I got to start recording Lucy. I got to mic Lucy up because Lucy is Mr. Moo's younger sister, or sister. I don't know who was born first. You know, they were all part of the same litter. And she is so talkative, and she makes these funny noises, and she reacts to you making noises back to her. So you guys got to show her some love too. It can't be all about Moo. I love my dude. Like that's my dude. He's big, he's long, and he's lean, and he's a handsome guy. I know that. And he's easily memeable. But you got to give the girl some love here. Especially Ritsu. She's my old gal. She's going to be 9 years old soon. So, and she's the one that sleeps in the bed at night. And if you want the emotes with the cats, then you got to become a channel member, right? So go ahead and do that. I appreciate you all. I was going to talk a little bit about Eric Swalwell. Man, this show's gone on. I don't know how I can go 2 hours. I start losing my voice. And I think today I was a little bit more cohesive and touched on a lot of the subjects I want. We'll talk a little bit about Swalwell because Swalwell has been an enemy. And to finish the point, we know this is all a play on China. That's what I believe in. I'm not going to reiterate the point. If you want to go back to previous episodes, especially the last like 3 episodes, I've gone in depth to this Cold War that we're fighting and proxy war that we're fighting against China. So I think you know, I really have nothing different to say other than it seems like finally publicly everybody's admitting this or realizing that this is what it's all about. Even though to me, just some dude on the internet that I work on computers during the day, and you know, I went to school for engineering, not geopolitics, that I was able to figure this out. So I don't think it was too difficult. You just gotta like read the tea leaves, and you can see all this for yourselves. So let's talk a little bit about Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell has been one of the thorns in our side with the Second Amendment. This son of a gun, every time something comes out, every time that there's some sort of, you know, mass killing or any sort of tragedy that involves firearms, especially if it's a big scary black rifle, Eric Swalwell is always there to start trying to push for an assault weapons ban and all this other crap, and magazine capacity bans, all this stuff. So he's always pushed against. In 2019, in 2018, 2019, he wanted a mandatory buyback of quote unquote assault weapons and wrote an op-ed in USA Today. He wanted gun owners that didn't comply to that to face prosecution. So pretty much what the Canadians are trying to do right now, and getting off-duty Mounties and cops to try to go door to door to enforce their assault weapons ban. That's Swalwell's, to use a term that might be appropriate for him, that was his wet dream. Apologies for the crassness of that, but it seems very appropriate. In May of 2019, he introduced the Freedom from Assault Weapons Act, HR 2959, which would have banned the importation, the sale, manufacture, transfer, or possession of semi-automatic assault weapons and large capacity ammunition feeding devices. So, and the term assault weapon is obviously so ridiculous. It's a scary term to describe anything that looks like a military weapon. But, you know, it's not full auto or burst or select fire or anything like that, which those aren't illegal either. You can buy machine guns. It's just really hard, and you have to buy a pre-banned gun, which again is a violation of the Second Amendment. And it just, you know, just shows you how all these gun laws are all bullshit, right? I mean, first of all, in pretty much most situations, full auto is not going to be that helpful. I'm not going to like spray people in self-defense or go hunting with a full auto. Full auto is more for fun. And obviously if you got to, even nowadays with drone warfare and all this stuff, the Second Amendment is not, wouldn't be as useful as it was in the past. So maybe we'll have to include arms as like as drones and 3D printing and all that stuff. We're gonna have to broaden our definition. The way that the left likes to broaden their definition on things, the definition of arm, but that's why we call them arms, right? It's the right to keep and bear arms. It's not the right to keep and bear guns specifically. It covers everything, offensive and defensive arms, in my opinion. That's why you used to be able to own cannons, why you can have body armor. People used to own, you know, ships of the line privately and things like that. So I'm an arms guy. It's not just guns. So we've got to we got to adapt here, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to our arms. He tried to push in 2019 to repeal the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. Basically, that's what would allow federal lawsuits against gun manufacturers if their product is used by a criminal or a murderer to kill people, which again is bull crap. You know, I've seen plenty of psychos and jihadis run over people with cars and kill them in a mass amount. And does that mean that like Chevy or Ford or any other auto manufacturer, should they be able to get sued because somebody uses their car to like kill other people? That's ridiculous, and that shouldn't be allowed. And he also was part of the co-sponsor of the assault weapon ban of 2021 Act. So he's got a track record of doing all this stuff. He's an enemy to the Second Amendment, and that's what my personal beef has been with Eric Swalwell. So imagine, and it's always seems to be the pot calling the kettle black, right? And you know it's bad when they start turning on you. And I do wonder. I think it was Anna Polina, who's one of my. I love Anna Polina. Ever since I met her, she's probably my favorite. She's probably my favorite congressman or congresswoman. She's my favorite member of Congress at this point, up there with like Tim Burchett and a couple of others. But she's like, how how many people in the Democrat Party and even in the Republican GOP base of the establishment are being covered and allowed. They're known abusers, they're known sexual assaulters, and pretty much they're using this as blackmail against them. As long as they toe the company and the party line, they're allowed to say, Anna Polina, you want to see a picture of Anna Polina, or you want to see a picture of Swalwell? So Anna Polina is, oh man, let's bring up Anna Polina. Anna Polina, I'll bring her up when my favorite picture of her was in Recoil magazine. An Air Force vet, too. I guess they're only showing Ballistic magazine here. Where's the cover of Recoil? No, I'm not going to show you Swalwell. If you don't know what Swalwell looks like, there's Anna Polina. She's a vet. She's half Latina, half white. And she is her husband is also a veteran. So, and she's pretty awesome. We had an interview with her on this channel back in the day. It was the first video that was ever on this channel. Unfortunately, I can't show you guys that video anymore. But yeah, that was the first like actual prominent video that we had on the channel back in the day when this all started in the early commentary days. All right. So yes, she basically, pushed out the theory there that, the left knows and even maybe people in the GOP know who these abusers are, and they're pushing it. And as long as they play ball, they're allowed to remain in here in Congress and be useful idiots until it gets too egregious, and then they throw them to the wolves. So it's BS. We know this. And Swalwell is the latest that we know. That Swalwell also had a relationship with Christine Fang, who worked for the who was a spy or alleged, we'll say alleged, spy for the Chinese Ministry of State Security, so they're CIA essentially. So he fell for that honeypot, faced no consequences after it. So we've got a guy here who's banging a Chinese spy. We know that the communists are all for removing weapons from their population so that they can't have any sort of resistance. And now he's pushing assault weapons bans and anti-Second Amendment stuff. It's like, come on, man, you can't make this stuff up. It's ridiculous. So I think that this is what we got to do. And they should lose all their benefits, Randy. They absolutely should. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. Like if you're kicked out of Congress for moral grounds, or honestly, any sort of crime or felony, like you should lose all of your congressional benefits. Like that should be no question whatsoever. Why does the taxpayer have to keep paying for you when you used your job to defend yourself or to obscure illegal, immoral stuff that you're doing? It's completely asinine and illogical. It makes no sense. So that has to be thrown out there. They have to be thrown out. So Swalwell's getting his just desserts. He's been accused of assault, and honestly, the proof is in the pudding, right? If you're not, especially on the left, if you're not guilty, you're gonna fight this to the death. You're going to do it. Because on the left, it's always deny, deny, deny. I'm going to stay in this position no matter what. But once they've turned on you, sorry, the coffee is giving me like the hiccups. I'm trying to suppress them a little bit. I can feel them. You can already see where this is. You can see how bad it is right now. He dropped out of the gubernatorial race in California. He resigned from Congress. Good riddance, you son of a gun. I can't wait to see more politicians to get thrown out, and it couldn't have happened to a better guy. So, like I said, Swalwell that ends well. This dude is going down, and I am personally happy about it. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. So, that's what I've got. We've gone more than 2 hours today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate you. Again, like, subscribe, support the channel any way that you can. Letting the word out and be known that I'm out here doing this stuff would be great. I didn't talk about any pop cultural stuff today. Again, I know that's where a lot of you not originally, that's where a lot of you guys found me back in the day. So if you want to hear more of that type of commentary, I guess I will if I have time. But you know, I got bigger fish to fry in this culture war, and I'm moving in and I've moved in that direction, going back to my roots here. However, the majority of the content on this channel is through the gaming streams. I did want to give a shout out to my other channel, Roaming with Rolo. Go ahead and check that out. I got 2 videos that are doing pretty good there for a channel with only like 59 subscribers last time I checked. I dropped a video of the surf session that I recorded with the boys this weekend. So a couple of my buddies, Kevin and Carlos, shout out to them. They're friends and neighbors here. Big time surfers. Went out. It was a beautiful day this weekend. They've been dying for me to take out the drone. I hadn't flown in a few weeks. And so I went ahead and did that, and turned out to be really awesome. I'll drop a link here in the chat. With that, boom. So go ahead and give that video a watch, smash the like on it, share that one too. It's really awesome. You can see the boys surfing out there and showing some of the beautiful locations that we have here in PR. And catching some of that stuff. My video with my entire walkthrough of the Puerto Rico Comic-Con is doing pretty well on that channel as well. It'll be a long time before it gets monetized, but I'm going to post a lot more content on there, and I've got more things to show off as I go on different adventures in this beautiful island that I call my home, that is also a U.S. territory, ladies and gentlemen. So, rather than going on vacation in other countries that may not appreciate you, stay in the United States and help the local economy of American citizens here in Puerto Rico. I also get my coffee here. None of this is sponsored by the Puerto Rico Tourism Bureau or any of the local coffee companies. But if you're looking to buy coffee, don't get Colombian coffee. Don't get these coffee from other countries. Get Puerto Rican coffee and support America. That's what it's all about, right? So if you want to support American coffee, look up. There's a lot of good Puerto Rican coffee companies. Cafe Crema, Oro, Yauco. Oh, man, there's just so many of them. Off the top of my head, I'll drop links on it. This was impromptu, but yes, support American businesses. Spend your tourist dollars. If you want to go to a tropical destination and don't want to fly all the way to Hawaii, come to Puerto Rico instead. Hang out. Come to the Puerto Rican Comic-Con next year. You'll be able to see me there, and check out some of the beautiful locations that your beautiful country has to offer here. And there are some good tax benefits if you decide to move to Puerto Rico, but it is becoming more and more expensive because the secret is out, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a pretty cool spot. We do have to worry about hurricanes, but so do you. So we also have to in Florida. So it doesn't matter which of my home bases I go to, I'm always going to get hosed by hurricanes. And that's just the way that it is. It is the cost of doing business and having great weather, is that it can get wiped out in one bad year. But hey, it's like the Midwest and tornadoes. At least I'm not miserable and cold during the winter. I don't know how you guys do it. I never will. The snow is not my friend. So God bless you all. God bless the United States of America. I will be back tomorrow night with La Familia for some Fortnite, and we'll have to do a Ready or Not stream and bring the new F team back in here. I'd love I'll message Disbrew and Mike and see if they'd like to jump on again one day, but I know that they're super busy when it comes to that stuff. So see, Alaska at least has a lot of cool things to offer. You got great camping, you got beautiful glaciers, you do have beautiful locations. It's a massive untapped wilderness that you can still get lost in and die in, and that's part of the appeal. And it is the last frontier in the United States. So as far as cold, but see, that's like intentional cold when you go visit Alaska. It's not like living in New England or the Midwest, where it's just like, this is just freaking miserable, man. I'm living in the suburbs. I'm getting snowed on. I could live in suburbs in the South instead. And it's a lot better. Like, I don't know how you guys deal with it. It's like live in Texas and Florida. They're not woke and you're not cold. Like, get out of Michigan, get out of Illinois, get out of New York, and all of New England people. Like, just get out of there, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It does build character, though. I will give you credit. Shoveling snow, there is a certain level of character that comes there, and sometimes we can be a little bit we lose track of time, and we don't have that appreciation in the South and in the tropics. So there's some merit to it. So, all right, everybody, catch you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. on this channel for Fortnite with La Familia. I'll be back with more Rolo's Rants next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. God bless you all, and have a wonderful evening.
Raging fire, we gather our tribe, fueled by desire. Raise your horns up high, let the music ignite. In this land of freedom, we'll dance through the night. Cowboy boots and leather, we're ready to roll. Rhythm pumps hard, calling out our souls. Make America metal again, we'll scream and we'll shout. There's no doubt with every rhythm.